Hi, Emeka. This is Jenna Flateman Posner, CDO at SNIPES. I was so excited to see you listed on my options of speakers to connect with. The question I have for you is, can you talk to us about the correlation between the evolution of ESPN over the past 20 years and your ability to foster the trajectory of your career?
I think that's a super interesting question, right? So a couple of things are happening there, right? So one part of that question is just like how ESPN has continued to evolve and has continued to innovate over the last 20 years. The second part of that question is like, all right, how does an executive meet that innovation and meet that evolution, right? So I always have this mantra like I think about, right? At any point in time in a corporate setting, you're either like one type of executive, right? So there's essentially executive of the past, right? There's an executive now, and there's an executive of the future. And I always feel like you always want to be part of the mindset of like you want to be an executive of the now or the executive of the future. Because as senior leaders and as the company is evolving, they're always looking at like who can help us like meet that sort of future need or sort of help us lead our next generation of executives and people to how we're evolving. So I think one part of it is like mindset, right? So actually running towards the change, like showcasing that you're going to be the most adaptable, and not the person who always sort of says, hey, we've done that like this every time for the last 20 years. Like it's going to be really hard for you to always be sort of part of the solution of the future. The second part I think is like, so one part is mindset. The other part is like this idea of like, let's call it capacity, let's call it marketing discipline, we can call it like skill set, whatever you want to call it. As an executive, we have to figure out how we continue to essentially like make ourselves relevant to how times are changing, right? So maybe 10 or 15 years ago was the advent of social media. Like if you were a marketing executive, like what are you doing to ultimately sort of get smart in sort of the social media space, develop a skill set that allows you to know how to market across that way. Right now, what's happening is like, you know, the innovation that you're seeing in sports in terms of just not just watching on broadcast or linear, watching on streaming. Like, how are you thinking about, you know, being a, you know, marketer that is bringing people to watch events on streaming? So it's this idea of like making sure you continue to develop your skill set, your capacity, that you stay relevant to how the business is changing. And I think the third part that I think is super interesting to me is what are you then doing in terms of like this idea of like passion points, right? It's mindset, it's sort of skill set and capacity, and there's this idea of passion for where ultimately the company is going. And then you being willing, like you then being one of those sort of ambassadors and one of those folks who are going to be the ones that kind of lead people there. And I find it like really interesting of like all the times that ESPN has changed, right? Like whether we were going from, you know, TV to digital to mobile to at the time watch ESPN to all the different iterations of it. It's like, do you have a passion for that direction, and can you wear it, and can you bring other people along? Because like I think that's kind of like how you also like position yourself to be one of those leaders once the company does evolve every couple of years. So that's like how I like looked at my career. It's like this idea of like mindset, right? Am I executive of now? Am I executive of the future? Capacity, what am I doing to essentially add skill sets to my sort of portfolio so I'm relevant to the change? And then can I bring a good degree of passion to showcase that I'm going to be part of that solution, and I can also lead other people to that sort of next chapter?